I love you, Rebecca, but love doesn't build dynasties. I need an heir. I want an open marriage. 24 hours after those words left Julian Park's lips, his mistress wasn't just pregnant, she was living in Rebecca's master bedroom. But here's what Julian didn't know. The woman he discarded wasn't broken. She was about to become the most dangerous piece on the board. Because the night Rebecca fled that humiliating charity gala, she didn't run home to cry. She stumbled into the Onyx room and collided with Baek Kyung-ho, the man even the NYPD whispers about in locked rooms. He didn't offer her sympathy. He offered her a ring and a proposition. Wear this. Let me legitimize my empire. Let's destroy his. Rebecca thought it was just revenge. She had no idea she was walking into a game where every player was hiding a poisoned card, and the man who promised to save her was the one holding the deadliest secret of all. Welcome back to Ruthless Romance Tales. What you're about to hear isn't just a story about a cheating husband. This is a psychological chess match with 8 twists that will gut punch you when you least expect it. No violence, just suspense so thick you'll forget to breathe. If you love stories where every character has something to hide and nothing is what it seems, smash that like button, subscribe and settle in. Because by the end of this, you'll question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and revenge. Rebecca Williams knew her marriage was dying the moment Julian checked his watch during her answer. They were sitting in their Tribeca penthouse, the kind of apartment that screamed success, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline that should have meant they'd made it. 7 years of marriage, 3 years of IVF hell, 3 years of needles, hormones, and the kind of hope that slowly rots into desperation. And now this. Rebecca's fingers traced the purple-yellow bruises stippling her lower abdomen, each one a small betrayal her body had endured in the name of hope. The injection sites were still tender from this morning's round, the 16th cycle in 3 years. She sat at the dining table in their penthouse, the marble cold beneath her forearms, and watched the city lights blur through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan sprawled below like a kingdom she'd helped build but would never inherit. Julian was late. Again. When he finally walked in, he didn't apologize. He loosened his tie, poured himself wine, and slid a second glass across the marble toward her. The sound of crystal against stone was the only greeting she received. "We need to talk." His voice carried that boardroom efficiency she'd once found attractive. Now it just sounded hollow. Rebecca's stomach tightened, and it had nothing to do with the hormones flooding her system. She wrapped her fingers around the wine glass, her deep brown skin stark against the pale stem, and waited. 7 years of marriage had taught her that Julian's silences were never empty. They were loaded guns. "I've been thinking about our situation." He sat across from her, but the distance felt oceanic. About the future of the Park legacy. There it was. Legacy. Not family. Not us. Legacy. "The IVF failed again," Rebecca said quietly, her voice steady even as her pulse hammered against her throat. "The doctor said we can try." "No." Julian cut her off with the casual cruelty of someone swatting a fly. 3 years, Rebecca. 16 cycles. My mother asks me every week when I'm going to give her a grandchild. I'm 35 years old. I can't wait forever. The blame sat between them like a third presence at the table, unspoken but deafening. "The doctors said we both tested fine," Rebecca countered, though her voice had gone soft, almost pleading. She hated the sound of it. "It's just bad luck. These things take time. Some couples try for 5-6 years before. 3 years isn't bad luck." Julian's eyes were flat, emotionless. "It's a message, and I've decided to listen." Rebecca's heart began a slow, dreadful descent. What does that mean? He took a long sip of wine, and she watched his throat work as he swallowed. When he set the glass down, his expression was as cold as the marble beneath her hands. "I want an open marriage." The words landed like a slap. For a moment, Rebecca couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The penthouse, with its museum-perfect furniture and art that cost more than most people's homes, suddenly felt like a mausoleum. "You want a what?" "An open marriage. We stay together publicly, maintain appearances. But I see other people, specifically women who can give me what you can't." Rebecca's vision blurred at the edges. She pressed her palms flat against the table to keep from shaking. "You want to sleep with other women to get them pregnant while we're still married? I need an heir, Rebecca." He said it like he was discussing a business acquisition. "If you can't provide one, someone else will. But I don't want to lose what we've built. This way, we both win, The audacity of it stole her breath. "I built your company," she said, her voice rising now, hot and jagged. "I'm the one who fixed your books when you were hemorrhaging money. I'm the one who restructured your entire financial model. I gave up my career, my friends, my life in Chicago to move here for you." "You built the accounts, Rebecca." Julian's tone didn't change. "Not the family. There's a difference. I need a legacy, and you can't give me that." The cruelty of it was surgical, precise. He'd found the deepest wound and pressed his thumb into it. Rebecca's breath came in shallow, fractured pulls. "This is insane. You can't just—" "She's moving in tomorrow." The world stopped. Rebecca stared at him, her mind struggling to process the words. "What?" Julian checked his watch, as if this conversation was just another appointment running over schedule. "Her name is Sujin. She's already pregnant. I'm not asking for permission, Rebecca. I'm telling you how this is going to work. The only question is whether you're staying or leaving." Rebecca's hands trembled against the marble. Her throat burned. She wanted to scream, to flip the table, to shatter every cold, pristine surface in this soulless apartment. But instead, she sat frozen, her mind racing through 7 years of sacrifices, of needles, of her body betraying her month after month. And now this. Julian stood, smoothing his suit jacket as if he'd just closed a deal. Take the night to think about it. But Rebecca? He paused at the doorway, his silhouette framed by the hallway light. "I'm doing this whether you agree or not. The only choice you have is whether you want to be here when it happens." Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall toward the guest room he'd claimed months ago. Rebecca sat alone in the dark, her wine untouched, her body aching, her world crumbling into ash. Julian made her attend the gala, not as his wife, but as his prop. "We need to maintain appearances," he'd said that morning, his voice devoid of warmth. "People are asking questions. You'll come, you'll smile, you'll make this easy." It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in expensive cologne and entitlement. So Rebecca dressed. She chose a champagne silk gown that hugged her curves, her rich brown skin glowing against the delicate fabric. She applied makeup with hands that barely trembled, painted her full lips a deep wine, and told herself she could survive one night. Just one night of pretending her world wasn't disintegrating. The car ride to the Met was silent. Julian sat on the opposite side, scrolling through his phone, his jaw tight. Rebecca watched the city lights streak past and wondered when she'd become a ghost in her own marriage. They arrived separately to the red carpet. "Protocol," Julian had said. Rebecca stepped out of the car into a wall of camera flashes that made her eyes water. She smiled, waved, and walked the gauntlet alone, while reporters shouted questions she couldn't hear over the roar of blood in her ears. Then Julian arrived. But he wasn't alone. The woman who emerged from his car wore gold, liquid, shimmering gold that clung to a body that was undeniably, visibly pregnant. Her hand rested on the swell of her belly like a crown, and when Julian placed his palm on the small of her back, the cameras exploded into a frenzy. Rebecca's smile froze. Her chest constricted. She stood there, drowning in champagne silk and humiliation, as Julian guided Sujin down the carpet like she was made of porcelain. He introduced her to investors, to board members, to the mayor, and every single time he said the same thing. This is Sujin, the mother of the park legacy, not his assistant, not a colleague, the mother of his legacy. Rebecca was shoved to the periphery, a discarded ornament no one knew what to do with. She clutched her clutch so hard her knuckles ached, her nails digging into the beaded fabric. She tried to breathe, tried to hold her composure, but the walls were closing in. Then she heard it. Julian's mother, standing near the champagne fountain, speaking in rapid Korean to a cluster of older women. Rebecca's Korean was better than they thought. She caught every venomous word. "The barren mule who refuses to leave. She clings to my son like a parasite. At least this one knows her purpose." The laughter that followed was polite, cultured, and lethal. Something inside Rebecca snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, final fracture that severed the last thread holding her together. She turned and walked. Not toward Julian, not toward the exits, just away. Her heels clicked against marble, then concrete. Then she was outside, and the sky was opening up. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking through her gown in seconds, turning the silk heavy and cold against her skin. She didn't care. She kicked off her heels and left them on the sidewalk, stumbling forward through puddles that splashed up her calves. Manhattan blurred around her. Car horns, Neon signs, the smell of wet asphalt and street vendor smoke. She didn't know where she was going until she saw it. A heavy black door set into a brick wall, unmarked except for a small brass plaque that read, "The Onyx Room." Rebecca pushed inside, desperate for shelter, for darkness, for anything that wasn't the suffocating spectacle she'd just fled. The warmth hit her first, then the low hum of jazz, then the weight of eyes turning toward her, a drowned woman in a ruined gown, water streaming from her hair and pooling at her bare feet. She took 2 steps forward, blinded by tears and rain, and collided hard into something solid, a chest, broad and unyielding. Hands gripped her arms, steadying her before she could fall. Strong hands, controlled hands. Rebecca looked up, blinking through the water in her lashes, and froze. The man holding her was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, dark eyes that held the kind of danger people crossed the street to avoid. His suit was immaculate, charcoal gray with a black shirt open at the collar, and he didn't flinch at the water soaking into the fabric from her gown. Behind him, the bartender's face had gone pale, his hands frozen mid-pour. The man studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His gaze traveled over her face, her soaked hair, her trembling frame, and when he spoke, his voice was low, smooth, and laced with something dark. "You're Rebecca Williams." It wasn't a question. Rebecca's breath caught. "How do you... come?" He released her arms, but his hand found the small of her back, guiding her through the dim speakeasy toward a private booth in the back. The leather was burgundy, worn soft with age. A single amber light hung overhead, casting shadows that made the space feel like a confessional. He gestured for her to sit, then slid into the booth across from her. A gun rested on the table between them, casual as a phone. He didn't acknowledge it, neither did she. A bartender appeared with 2 glasses of whiskey, set them down without a word, and vanished. 3 years ago, the man said, his dark eyes never leaving hers. My shipping company was hemorrhaging money, import delays, customs nightmares, bleeding cash in ways I couldn't track. He lifted his glass, swirled the amber liquid. Then someone restructured the entire logistics chain, rerouted shipments, cleaned the books, saved me $8 million. Rebecca's mind raced backward. The consulting project, the nightmare spreadsheets, Julian's friend who needed help. That was you, Baek Kyung-ho. He didn't extend his hand, didn't smile, just watched her with the patience of a predator. And you, Rebecca Williams, are the most brilliant analyst I've ever encountered, which is why I know you didn't stumble into my bar by accident tonight. I didn't know this was your... You ran. His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. From the gala. From Julian Park and his pregnant mistress. From the mother-in-law who called you a barren mule in Korean you weren't supposed to understand. Rebecca's chest tightened. You were there. I'm always there. He took a slow sip of whiskey. Julian owes my organization a considerable amount of money. I make it my business to know everything about my debtors, including their wives. The word wives landed like a blade between her ribs. Kyung-ho leaned forward, elbows on the table, close enough that she could smell cedar and smoke on him. I have a problem, Rebecca, and I think you're the solution. I'm not interested in... 48 hours from now, I close the largest real estate acquisition in Manhattan history. 32 buildings, legitimate holdings that will secure my family's future for generations. His jaw tightened, but the board sees me as a thug, a criminal playing dress-up. They want assurance I'm building something respectable, not a front for money laundering. Rebecca's analytical mind kicked in despite herself. They want a wife. They want proof I'm civilized. His lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. It was something colder. A brilliant, respectable woman on my arm. Someone educated. Someone who commands a room. Someone like you. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé. I want you to be my weapon. Kyung-ho's eyes glittered in the low light. Julian destroyed you tonight. Made you invisible. Replaceable. I can make you unforgettable. Untouchable. He paused. Let the words settle. And I can make him regret every second he ever underestimated you. Rebecca's pulse hammered. Why would you do this? Because I need you for 48 hours to close my deal. And you need me to burn Julian's world to the ground. He tilted his head. Besides, your husband owes me money. When he sees you with me, he'll know exactly how much danger he's in. That kind of fear is priceless. It was transactional, cold, perfectly calculated, and yet something in his gaze held a flicker of something else. Respect, maybe. Recognition. What do you get out of this? Rebecca asked, her voice steadier now. A queen on my chessboard. Kyung-ho reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a ring that stole her breath. Platinum, with a black diamond surrounded by smaller white stones. It looked like a crown, like a weapon. Wear this. Stand beside me at the signing. Let Julian see you transformed. Let him watch while I give you everything he took away. And after the deal closes, then we negotiate what comes next. His voice dropped to a near whisper. But I promise you this, Rebecca. By next week, Julian Park will be on his knees, begging for your forgiveness, and you'll have the power to decide whether he deserves it. He slid the ring across the table. It caught the light, glittering like a dark promise. Rebecca stared at it. At him. At the gun, still resting between them like a third party to this devil's bargain. She thought of Julian's cold dismissal, of Sujin's hand on her pregnant belly, of the years she'd spent making herself smaller, quieter, less. Rebecca picked up the ring. The weight of it was substantial, real. She met Kyung-ho's eyes. Do we have a deal? His smile was slow, dangerous, and absolutely lethal. We have a war. The boutique was closed when they arrived, but the door opened anyway. Kyung-ho's world operated on different rules. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over racks of clothing that looked more like artwork than fabric. A woman with silver hair and sharp eyes appeared, measuring Rebecca with a glance that felt both clinical and approving. Everything, Kyung-ho said simply. She needs armor. Rebecca stood in the center of the room, still wearing her ruined gala gown, dried now and stiff with rainwater. She felt exposed, hollow. Kyung-ho circled her slowly, his footsteps silent on the marble floor. When he stopped in front of her, his dark eyes held something between assessment and promise. You've been dressing like a wife, he said, his voice low and deliberate, beige, modest, invisible. Julian trained you to disappear. He reached out, lifted a strand of her damp hair between his fingers, then let it fall. Stop dressing like a wife, Rebecca. Dress like a widow. The word sent a shiver down her spine. For the next hour, Rebecca became someone else. The silver-haired woman brought pieces that felt like weapons. A deep burgundy suit with sharp shoulders that made her look taller, more dangerous. A black silk blouse that draped against her brown skin like liquid shadow. Heels that added 3 inches and transformed her walk into a statement. When Rebecca finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her natural curls were styled into sleek waves that framed her face. Her makeup was bolder, deep plum lips, gold on her lids that made her dark eyes luminous. She looked like money, like power, like someone who could ruin you with a smile. Kyung-ho stood behind her, his reflection meeting hers in the glass. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Perfect, he murmured, and the word felt like a caress. The business luncheon was at the River Club, the kind of place where Manhattan's elite made deals over oysters and aged scotch. Rebecca's heart hammered as they approached the entrance, her hand resting lightly on Kyung-ho's arm. He wore a charcoal suit that fit like sin, and together, they looked like something out of a dangerous dream. The moment they entered, conversation died. Every head turned. Rebecca felt the weight of 100 stares, felt the ripple of shock move through the room like a shockwave. The discarded wife, the barren failure, walking in on the arm of Baek Kyung-ho, the man whose name people whispered in back rooms and feared in broad daylight. Then she saw Julian. He was seated at a table near the windows, mid-conversation with David Rothstein, the hedge fund manager who'd invested $20 million in Julian's company. When Julian looked up and saw her, his face went white, then red, then something close to murderous. He stood so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Kyung-ho's hand found the small of Rebecca's back, a touch that felt both possessive and protective. He guided her forward, moving through the room with the confidence of a man who owned it. When Julian started toward them, Kyung-ho stopped, adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate slowness, and met Julian's eyes. Julian froze mid-step. It wasn't a word, wasn't a threat, just a look. But Julian understood it perfectly. He stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight, as Kyung-ho led Rebecca past him like he was furniture. They stopped at Rothstein's table. The older man stood, eyebrows raised, clearly intrigued. David, Kyung-ho said smoothly, I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Rebecca Williams. Rothstein's eyes widened. Rebecca Williams, Julian's former wife, Rebecca said, her voice steady and warm. She extended her hand, and Rothstein shook it, still processing. It's lovely to see you again, David. I was just telling Kyung-ho about your portfolio diversification strategy. Brilliant work. Rothstein preened. You remember that conversation? Of course. You mentioned you were considering expanding into Julian's biotech sector. Rebecca tilted her head, her smile never wavering. Though I'd be careful with Q4. His burn rate is unsustainable, and the clinical trials are 6 months behind schedule. The SEC filing shows cash reserves depleting faster than projected revenue growth. Rothstein's expression shifted. I wasn't aware of the trial delays. Most people aren't. Rebecca's voice was light, conversational. Julian's excellent at optics, less excellent at execution. Behind them, Rebecca heard Julian's sharp intake of breath. Rothstein pulled out his phone, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. His face darkened as he read. Excuse me, he said tightly, already walking away from the table. Kyung-ho leaned close to Rebecca's ear, his breath warm against her skin, devastating. Rebecca turned her head slightly, her lips almost brushing his jaw. That was just the warning shot. Across the room, Julian stood frozen, watching his biggest investor walk out the door. His phone buzzed, once, twice, then continuously. Rebecca knew what he was seeing, his stock price dropping in real time, his carefully constructed empire beginning its freefall, and she smiled. Living with Kyung-ho was like inhabiting a elegant trap. His penthouse overlooked the city from 40 floors up, all glass and dark wood and silence so thick it felt like held breath. They maintained separate bedrooms, separate spaces, but the air between them grew heavier each day. Charged, dangerous. 3 days after the luncheon, Rebecca sat at his dining table reviewing documents for the real estate closing. Numbers blurred across the pages as she cross-referenced contracts, her mind sharp and focused. Kyung-ho stood by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Korean that she'd begun to understand more than she let on. Then the room tilted. Rebecca's vision swam. The papers slipped from her hands. She tried to stand, tried to call out, but her legs buckled, and the world went dark. She woke to arms around her, strong, steady. Kyung-ho had caught her before she hit the floor, and now he held her against his chest, his heart thundering beneath her ear. His voice was sharp, urgent, speaking to someone she couldn't see. Get Dr. Park here. Now. I'm fine, Rebecca whispered, but the words felt weak. You're not. His jaw was tight, his usual composure fractured. You're not fine. Dr. Park arrived within 20 minutes, a gray-haired man with surgeon's hands and a gaze that missed nothing. He examined Rebecca in the guest room while Kyung-ho paced outside like a caged animal. She could hear his footsteps, the barely controlled energy radiating through the walls. The doctor asked questions about her diet, her habits, the IVF treatments. Then he drew blood, and the silence while they waited for results felt suffocating. When Dr. Park emerged, his expression was grim. Kyung-ho was beside him instantly. What's wrong with her? May I? Dr. Park gestured to the tea service on the kitchen counter, the delicate porcelain Rebecca had been drinking from that morning. He lifted the pot, sniffed, then set it down carefully. Where did this come from? Rebecca's throat tightened. It's fertility tea. My mother-in-law sent it to me. For 3 years. She said it would help me conceive. The doctor's face darkened. Miss Williams, this tea contains dong quai and pennyroyal in concentrations that would prevent conception, not encourage it. Combined with the synthetic compounds I found in your blood work, someone has been systematically poisoning you. The words hit like a physical blow. Rebecca's hands started shaking. Poisoning, she repeated, her voice hollow. The herbs alone would disrupt ovulation. But the synthetic compounds, Dr. Park pulled out his tablet, showed her chemical formulas she didn't understand. These aren't natural. They're designed to mimic hormonal imbalances, to weaken uterine lining. Whoever formulated this knew exactly what they were doing. Rebecca thought of the packages that arrived like clockwork. The elegant handwriting. The note that always said the same thing. For the grandchildren I pray for. Julian's mother had been poisoning her. For 3 years. She watched me inject myself with hormones, Rebecca whispered. Watched me cry every month when the treatments failed. She knew the whole time. Kyung-ho had gone perfectly still. that terrifying stillness that preceded storms. "They didn't just break your heart," he said, his voice low and lethal. "They violated your body, systematically, for years." Rebecca looked up at him, saw fury burning behind his eyes, saw something else too, something protective and possessive and devastating. "The damage," she managed. "Is it permanent?" Dr. Park shook his head. "The compounds will flush out over time. 6 months, perhaps 8. Your body will heal." He paused. "But Miss Williams, you were never infertile. You were sabotaged." The room spun again, but this time Rebecca was standing. 3 years. 3 years of believing her body was broken. 3 years of guilt and shame and needles and failure. All of it manufactured. All of it a lie. Kyung-ho moved to the bar cart, poured himself whiskey. His hand trembled just barely, but Rebecca saw it. He lifted the glass, stared at it for a long moment, then hurled it against the wall. Crystal exploded, amber liquid streaming down the white paint like blood. "I'm going to destroy them." His voice was quiet, controlled, which made it more terrifying than screaming. "Not quickly, slowly. I'm going to take everything they have and burn it in front of them." Rebecca stood, crossed to him. Her legs felt stronger now, fueled by rage instead of weakness. "Not just you, we." Kyung-ho turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It was dark, devoted, dangerous. "You should rest," he said, but didn't move away. "I'm done resting." Rebecca stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him. "They poisoned me, Kyung-ho. They stole 3 years of my life, and Julian let it happen." His hand came up, cupped her jaw with surprising gentleness. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and the touch sent electricity down her spine. "Then we make them pay," he murmured. "Every single one." Rebecca's pulse hammered. She nodded, and neither of them stepped back. 2 nights later, Kyung-ho led Rebecca down a hallway she hadn't known existed. Behind a panel disguised as a bookshelf was a room bathed in blue light from multiple screens. His surveillance room, the heart of how he knew everything about everyone. "I need to show you something," he said, his voice tight. "But once you see it, there's no going back." Rebecca's skin prickled. "Show me." He pulled up footage dated 3 days ago. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. The location made Rebecca's stomach drop. Her old penthouse, the master bedroom she'd been banished from. The angle suggested a camera hidden somewhere high, probably in the smoke detector Julian had insisted on installing himself. On screen, Soojin stood in front of the full-length mirror wearing a silk nightgown. Alone. Rebecca watched as Soojin's hands moved to her swollen belly. Watched as she lifted the nightgown, and watched as she peeled away a silicone prosthetic, setting it carefully on the dresser like a shed skin. Rebecca's breath stopped. Soojin's stomach beneath was flat, toned, completely, utterly not pregnant. "That's not possible," Rebecca whispered. "She lives with him. Julian would know. He would." Kyung-ho tapped another screen. Audio waveforms appeared, and he played a recording from 2 weeks ago. Soojin's voice, sugar-sweet and trembling. "The doctor said it's high risk, Julian. The baby's position is delicate. We can't be intimate. I need my own space, for the baby's sake." Then Julian's voice, frustrated but resigned. "Fine, I'll take the guest room. Whatever you need." Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. "He destroyed our marriage for a woman who won't even let him touch her. He destroyed your marriage for a ghost." Kyung-ho's voice was cold. "She's not carrying his air. She's carrying a lie." The laughter came first. Sharp, bitter, edged with hysteria. Rebecca laughed until her shoulders shook, until the sound twisted into something raw and broken. Then the sobs came, tearing through her like a storm. Kyung-ho caught her before she collapsed. His arms wrapped around her, solid and sure, and Rebecca buried her face against his chest. She felt his chin rest on top of her head, felt his hand move in slow circles against her back. "He gave up everything for nothing," she choked out between sobs. 3 years of my body breaking, 7 years of my life, for a fake pregnancy and a woman who's probably laughing at him. She's not just laughing, she's stealing. Kyung-ho's voice rumbled against her ear. "We traced her. Corporate spy. Julian's competitor hired her 18 months ago to infiltrate his company and extract trade secrets. But she got greedy, decided to take the wife's place too." Rebecca pulled back enough to look at him. Her face was wet, her eyes swollen, but something fierce burned behind the tears. Who hired her? Marcus Vega, tech rival in Silicon Valley. Kyung-ho's thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek, the gesture so gentle it made her heart stutter. He's been bleeding Julian dry for over a year. Does Julian know? Not yet. Kyung-ho's dark eyes held hers. That's your decision. When you want him to know, how you want him to suffer. Rebecca stared up at him, this dangerous man who'd become her sword, her shield, her unexpected sanctuary. His hand was still on her face, thumb tracing her jawline. The air between them had shifted from grief to something molten. Kyung-ho, she whispered, and it sounded like a question she didn't know how to ask. He answered it anyway. His kiss was slow, deliberate, nothing like the rushed, perfunctory kisses she'd known with Julian. Kyung-ho kissed her like he was memorizing her, like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head, deepening the kiss until Rebecca's knees went weak. She gripped his shirt, pulled him closer, tasted whiskey and one on his tongue. This wasn't strategy, wasn't performance. This was real, raw, and absolutely terrifying. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kyung-ho rested his forehead against hers. This complicates things, he murmured. I know. Rebecca's hands were still fisted in his shirt. She should let go. Step back. Remember this was supposed to be fake. But she didn't move. Rebecca. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. The grief was still there, but beneath it burned something colder, sharper. Don't tell him yet, she said, her voice steady now. Don't tell him about Sujin. Don't tell him about the spy. I want to take everything first. His company, his reputation, his dignity. I want him to lose it all while thinking he's won. Kyung-ho's smile was slow and absolutely lethal. You're terrifying. Good. Rebecca's fingers loosened on his shirt, smoothed the wrinkles she'd created. I'm tired of being underestimated. I've never underestimated you. His hand covered hers, pressed it flat against his chest where his heart beat steady and strong. That's why you're dangerous. The safe house was 2 hours north of the city, hidden in the woods where no one would think to look. Kyung-ho brought Rebecca there on a night when snow fell in thick, silent curtains. Inside, a fire crackled in the stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across walls lined with books and secrets. He poured her wine. She didn't drink it. She watched him instead. This man who'd become more than a weapon, more than an arrangement. There's one more thing, Kyung-ho said finally. He retrieved a folder from the safe, old and worn at the edges. When he set it on the table between them, Rebecca saw the hospital logo embossed on the cover. I wasn't going to show you this. I thought maybe you'd suffered enough, but you deserve the whole truth. Rebecca opened the folder. Medical records, dating back 15 years, Julian's name at the top. She read slowly, her analytical mind processing the clinical language. Sports injury, testicular trauma, surgical intervention, prognosis, permanent sterility. The words blurred. Rebecca read them again, then again. He's sterile, she whispered. Has been since he was 20. Kyung-ho's voice was quiet. Before he even met you. Rebecca's hands trembled. 3 years of needles, 3 years of failure, 3 years of him watching her break, watching her blame herself, knowing the entire time that he was the reason they couldn't conceive. Then she saw the note clipped to the back page. Handwritten, elegant script on expensive stationery. Seal these records. Julian must never know. His pride could not survive this truth. We will find another way to secure the park line. Perhaps a wife who comes with her own fertility issues. Perfect cover. It was signed by Julian's mother. Rebecca's breath came in short, sharp gasps. He didn't know. No. Kyung-ho moved closer, sat beside her on the leather sofa. His mother hid it from him. Let him believe he was capable. Let him destroy you for something that was never your fault. Was never even his fault. Just her manipulation. She found me on purpose. Rebecca's voice was hollow. A black woman from a middle-class family. Easy to blame, easy to discard. She needed someone to take the fall for her son's sterility. And when you didn't leave quietly, she poisoned you to make sure you'd fail. Kyung-ho's jaw was tight, then pushed him toward Sujin to give him the air she promised. Except Sujin's baby is as fake as everything else. Rebecca stood abruptly, the papers falling from her lap. She walked to the fireplace, pressed her palms against the warm stone. I was never broken. No, he was. She turned to face Kyung-ho, and something in her expression had shifted. The last vestiges of the woman who'd begged for Julian's approval had burned away. He destroyed me for a lie, his mother told him. For a legacy that was never going to exist. Kyung-ho rose, crossed to her with that predatory grace she'd come to recognize. Rebecca, she kissed him. Not gentle this time, not hesitant. She kissed him with the full force of her rage and relief, and the desperate need to feel something real. Her hand slid up his chest, into his hair, pulling him closer. Kyung-ho made a sound low in his throat, his arms wrapping around her waist, lifting her until her toes barely touched the ground. "Are you sure?" he murmured against her lips, even as his hands trembled with restraint. "I'm reclaiming myself." Rebecca's brown eyes met his dark ones, fierce and certain. "I'm choosing this, choosing you, choosing to feel something that isn't pain." Kyung-ho carried her toward the bedroom, and the firelight caught on her skin, made her glow like something molten and precious. He laid her down on the bed with a reverence that made her chest ache, his hands gentle despite the hunger in his eyes. "You were never broken," he whispered, tracing the faded bruises on her stomach where the needles had been. Each touch was worship. "You were always whole, always brilliant, always devastating." Rebecca pulled him down to her, and when their lips met again, it felt like erasure and creation all at once. The ghost of Julian's touch vanished beneath Kyung-ho's careful exploration. Every kiss rewrote history. Every whispered word rebuilt what had been destroyed. Time blurred, the fire burned low, and somewhere in the darkness between grief and healing, between revenge and redemption, Rebecca found herself again. When dawn broke through the windows, Rebecca lay wrapped in sheets in Kyung-ho's arms, his breath steady against her neck. She stared at the ceiling, her mind clear for the first time in years. "Kyung-ho," she whispered. His voice was rough with sleep. "Burn him down." Rebecca turned in his arms, met his eyes in the gray morning light. Her voice was cold steel wrapped in silk. "Julian, his mother, everyone who thought I was disposable. Take everything they have and leave nothing but ash." Kyung-ho's smile was slow and absolutely lethal. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her lips. "It would be my pleasure." The boardroom at Park Industries was all glass and steel, designed to intimidate, 40 floors up, with Manhattan sprawling below like a conquered territory. Julian had called the emergency meeting himself, sent the agenda to every board member. Vote to remove Rebecca Williams Park from all company holdings and shares. He thought he was calling an execution. He had no idea he was attending his own funeral. Rebecca arrived with Kyung-ho, and the board members' faces went pale. She wore black, a sharp suit that made her look like a blade. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup flawless, and the massive engagement ring on her finger caught the light like a warning. Julian sat at the head of the table, Soo-jin beside him in a maternity dress that displayed her prosthetic belly like a trophy. His mother occupied the chair to his right, her expression cold and regal. "Rebecca." Julian's voice dripped with false sympathy. "I'm glad you came. This will be easier if you accept it gracefully." Rebecca smiled, set her briefcase on the table. "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world." Julian opened the meeting with practiced confidence. "As you all know, my wife and I have been separated for some time, given her inability to contribute to the park legacy and her recent associations with questionable individuals. I'm asking the board to vote her out of her shares, especially now that I'm about to become a father." He placed his hand over Soo-jin's. She smiled demurely, playing her part perfectly. "That's touching, Julian." Rebecca's voice was silk over steel. "Before we vote, I have a few items to present. Just housekeeping, really." She opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder. "First, let's discuss the financial discrepancies I uncovered. Over the past 18 months, someone has been embezzling company funds, small amounts at first, then larger, totaling approximately $3 million. Julian's expression tightened. "That's absurd. Our accounting is meticulous." "I know. I designed the system." Rebecca projected a spreadsheet onto the screen. "The transfers are hidden well, routed through shell companies, but they all lead to the same place. Soo-jin Hwang's personal accounts in the Cayman Islands." The room erupted. Soo-jin's smile vanished. "That's a lie," Julian said, but his voice wavered. "Soo-jin wouldn't she?" Rebecca clicked to the next slide. "Let's talk about what else Soo-jin wouldn't do, like actually be pregnant." The screen lit up with surveillance footage. Sujin, alone in the penthouse bedroom, peeling off her silicone belly. The timestamp was from 2 nights ago. The board members gasped. Julian stared at the screen, his face draining of color. "That's impossible," he whispered. I've seen her at doctor's appointments. I've felt the baby kick. Silicone prosthetics can be very convincing." Rebecca's voice was calm, almost gentle, especially when the father is kept at arm's length. High-risk pregnancy, no intimacy, separate bedrooms. She played you, Julian. The baby you destroyed our marriage for doesn't exist. Julian turned to Sujin, his expression fracturing. Tell them this is fake." Sujin stood, her hand protectively over her fake belly. Then, seeing no escape, she ran. Her heels clicked frantically as she fled the boardroom. 2 of Kyung-ho's men, positioned at the door, caught her before she reached the elevator. Julian's hands were shaking. His mother's face had gone ashen. "But the real tragedy," Rebecca continued, her voice dropping lower, "is that even if Sujin had been pregnant, the child wouldn't have been yours." "What are you talking about?" Rebecca pulled out the final document. Medical records, yellowed with age. "You're sterile, Julian. Have been since you were 20. A sports injury, testicular trauma, permanent damage." Julian's eyes widened. "No, that's not I would know. I would remember. Your mother made sure you wouldn't." Rebecca's gaze shifted to the older woman, whose face had become a mask of stone. "She sealed the records, hid the truth from you, because your pride couldn't survive it. So she found another solution. She found me." The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. "She chose a wife she could blame, someone easy to discard, a black woman from a modest background who she could poison with fertility teas that were actually contraceptives. She made you believe I was the problem, made me believe it too. For 3 years, I blamed myself, took thousands of needles, destroyed my body, all while you," her voice cracked just slightly, "were the one who couldn't have children." Julian looked at his mother. "Tell her she's lying." His mother said nothing. "Tell me." Julian's voice rose to a shout. Silence. Reality crashed into Julian like a tidal wave. His face contorted, moving through disbelief, rage, devastation. He grabbed a letter opener from the table, lunged toward Rebecca with a sound that was barely human. Kyung-ho moved like shadow made solid. He caught Julian's wrist mid-strike, twisted, and the letter opener clattered to the floor. Julian gasped in pain as Kyung-ho controlled him with terrifying ease, pressing him face down against the glass table. "You traded a queen for a ghost," Kyung-ho said quietly, his voice cold enough to freeze. "Now you have nothing." Sirens wailed outside. Police were already entering the building, responding to the embezzlement evidence Rebecca had filed an hour before the meeting. Rebecca stood, gathered her documents. As she walked past Julian's broken form, she paused. "You wanted a legacy, Julian. Congratulations. You'll be remembered, just not the way you hoped." 6 months later, Rebecca stood in her corner office overlooking Central Park, reviewing contracts for her 3rd major client acquisition. Williams Financial Consulting had become the firm every Fortune 500 company wanted. She'd built her empire from the ashes of her old life, and it was glorious. The divorce had been finalized in record time. Julian's legal team couldn't fight back when he was facing federal fraud charges. His mother had disappeared to Seoul, her reputation in tatters. Sujin was serving 18 months for embezzlement and corporate espionage. Rebecca had everything she'd ever wanted: success, freedom, Kyung-ho. They lived between his penthouse and a private island off the coast that felt like another world entirely. He'd closed his real estate deal with Rebecca at his side, legitimizing his family's holdings. But somewhere along the way, the arrangement had stopped being fake. They'd become partners in every sense. Equals, lovers who chose each other daily. Then the nausea started. Rebecca woke one morning in their island home, sunlight streaming through white linen curtains, and barely made it to the bathroom. Kyung-ho found her there, pale and trembling, and his face went tight with fear. "It's the poison," she whispered. "It's still in my system. What if we're going to the hospital now?" The helicopter ride felt endless. Kyung-ho held her hand the entire time, his thumb moving in circles against her palm. She could feel the tension radiating from him, the carefully controlled terror that something might take her away from him. At the private medical facility, Dr. Park ran every test imaginable: blood work, ultrasounds, toxicology screens. Rebecca lay on the examination table, Kyung-ho standing beside her, his hand never leaving hers. When Dr. Park returned, he was smiling. "The poison is completely flushed from your system," he said. "Has been for months. You're not sick, Miss Williams." Rebecca's breath caught. "Then what? You're 8 weeks pregnant." The world stopped. Rebecca stared at the doctor, unable to process the words. Pregnant, after everything, after being told she was broken, after 3 years of failure. She turned to Kyung-ho, and what she saw on his face shattered her. His eyes were wet, this man who commanded fear from everyone who knew his name, who could dismantle empires with a phone call, who moved through the world like a dark prince. He was crying. "Kyung-ho," she whispered. He dropped to his knees beside the examination table, his forehead pressed against her stomach. His shoulders shook. Rebecca's hands moved to his hair, holding him as he wept against her. "I thought I'd never have this," he said, his voice breaking. "Never have you. Never have a family that was mine." Dr. Park quietly excused himself, giving them privacy. Rebecca pulled Kyung-ho up, cupped his face in her hands. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He said it like a prayer, like a miracle he didn't deserve. Then he kissed her, soft and reverent, tasting like salt and joy. His hands moved to her stomach, spanning the flat surface where life was growing. His fingers found the faded scars from the IVF needles, those small marks that had once represented failure. He kissed each one, his lips gentle against her brown skin. "These scars," he murmured, "they didn't define your end. They were the map that led you to me." Rebecca's tears came then, hot and healing. "I love you. I love you." Kyung-ho rose, pulled her into his arms. "You're my empire, Rebecca. Everything else is just territory." Later, wrapped in their hotel suite overlooking the water, Rebecca thought about Julian. He was in federal prison, awaiting trial. His company had been liquidated. His mother had abandoned him to save herself. Sujin had given an interview from prison, revealing she'd never loved him, that he'd been a mark from the beginning. Julian had wanted an open marriage to secure happiness and legacy. He'd ended up in a cage with nothing but the ghost of his own arrogance. Rebecca, who'd been discarded like garbage, had found freedom in the most unexpected place, in the arms of a man the world called a devil, in the company of someone who saw her brilliance and bowed to it, in the security of being chosen, cherished, and crowned. She pressed her hand to her stomach, where their child grew, the baby Julian's mother had tried to prevent, the family Rebecca thought she'd never have. Kyung-ho's arm tightened around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "What are you thinking? That I've never been safer than I am with you?" He kissed her temple. "You were always safe with me. From the moment you crashed into me at the Onyx Room, you were mine to protect. And avenge. And avenge." His smile against her skin was wicked. "Though I think you did most of the avenging yourself. I just provided the stage." Rebecca laughed, the sound light and free. 6 months ago, she'd believed her life was over. Now, she understood it was just beginning. Julian had traded a queen for nothing, and Rebecca had claimed her kingdom. If this story wrecked you the way it wrecked me, hit that like button and subscribe to Ruthless Romance Tales. Drop a comment telling me which twist hit you hardest, the poison tea, the fake pregnancy, or Julian's sterility. And if you want more dark romance stories where revenge tastes sweeter than forgiveness, you know where to find me. Until next time, remember, never underestimate the woman you discard. She might just become the queen who destroys you. It would be my pleasure.